Hi, my name is Vashtalos. Thanks for tuning in to my last video. Even if it was a little bit of a meme, this is the follow-up, and we have fleshed out the build as best as we possibly can. The build is attribute stacking mines Deadeye. I want to say mines and not a specific skill because at the end we're going to be going over a bunch of alternative skills that you can use. You don't even have to be a Deadeye. There's certainly other ascendancies that would be worth exploring. And for the rest of the table of contents of this video, I guess, it would be, we're going to go over the ascendancy, we're going to be going over the passive tree, some of the things I felt that I needed to sacrifice in order to pick up others. I will also be going over the gear, how we crafted some of it, how lucky we were in buying some of it. And I would also like to give credit where credit is due, and that would be to Arrow and Emilgod. Without their content, without their videos, this build would not be possible, nor would the video. I remember watching Arrow's Ice Shot Miner Deadeye, and I thought that is so cool, I've got to do something similar in my own way. So I started reaching back further for other things that I could potentially smash together with his idea, and I came across Emil God's build of the week from I think it was 3.23, and he used Curtain Call, which is a helmet that lets you throw additional mines if you meet a certain threshold of intelligence and dexterity. So thus my idea was born. I wanted to use alternative skills like Arrow was using, but I wanted to do a bunch of different things in my own way. So I'm going to be going over all of that in this video. From my community, I hope you guys will genuinely go check out those videos I'll be leaving in the comments from them. They certainly deserve your attention, whether it's a like, comment, subscribe, or even just a view. Let them know that Vashtalos sent you. And I would also like to highlight, emphasize, whatever you want to call it, that this is a tier 16 map blaster. This is not designed for tier 17s. It is not designed for even rudimentary bossing strategies. You shouldn't do that, and you shouldn't spend currency on this build if you have that expectation. I would recommend playing something else if that's the case. It's also not a league starter. This is not something that I would say like, oh yeah, once you have Blast Chain available to you, you're gonna annihilate the campaign. It's not really true. Even in like Twink gear, I had a little bit of a tough time, albeit I was memeing. But I mean, even in Twink gear, a meme shouldn't feel that bad in my opinion. So I wouldn't recommend this as a league starter. It's just another fun experiment. And I would say that I had fun on this. It was an absolute blast. Spitballing ideas off of chat as usual and how we could get this to be the best version of itself that it could be. Okay, let's get started. I'm going to start out with the skills. I'm going to go over the ascendancy after that. Then we will do the passive tree and we will finish off with the gear. And I will try and provide as much commentary as I possibly can. I'm probably going to really talk your ear off. This might be a long one. And I will also try to provide as many alternatives for some of the more difficult aspects of the build. I may even go over some of the things I used as stepping stones to reach the point that we currently are at, as there are, I wouldn't say a lot of thresholds that you need to hit, but there are some, and you'll need to be aware of them if you plan on copying any of this. So, main skill, Tornado Shot. You don't have to use Tornado Shot. You can really use any skill that you want. It's not like Tornado Shot has anything spectacular going for it other than firing off those spectacular secondary projectiles. So if you're curious about using something else, I'm going to show you some of my favorite examples at the end of this video. Elemental damage with attacks, Blast Chain Mine, Trap and Mine damage, Elemental Focus, and then Charged Mines. The reason why we don't go with high impact mines and try to benefit from that aura effect is that since we're always throwing 3 mines, I'm pretty sure I value more damage in the place of a chance to deal double damage, especially since we're using detonate mines and automation, and I'm not really able to have those mines up as a consistent aura. And we're already using a different type of mine, so yeah. I'm going with Blast Chain Mine in this one. If you're able to figure out that high impact is better, then bravo. Trap and mine damage. This is really powerful. I mean, it comes with the downside of lowering our mine throwing speed, but we solve that by using charged mines and gaining mine throwing speed through our frenzy charges. We gain these charges almost instantly every single time because as long as our mines are targeting something, we're going to have that chance to gain those charges. Elemental focus, I was thinking that instead of elemental focus that we should have used elemental penetration, but then once I put it into POB, it was saying that elemental focus was a little bit better, so we went with elemental focus. And that's all the support gems. And I really do want to emphasize that you do not have to use Tornado Shot. Feel around if you find yourself playing this build. In the chest piece, we have Sniper's Mark, Mark on Hit, Mana Forged Arrows, Elemental Hit of the Spectrum, Life Tap, and Overcharge. I don't know if Overcharge is necessary. You could probably replace this with Elemental Proliferation if you wanted to make that a wider application, but Overcharge is kind of nice for the bosses that you will be running into in those Tier 16 maps. Hopefully no Pinnacle bosses. And yeah, Sniper's Mark, run of the mill. We use projectiles. We want more projectiles. Mark on Hit, I don't want to cast that mark myself. I don't care how much worse it makes the mark. And then if you watched my last build guide for my Poison Hottie or Poison Herald of Thunder, whatever you want to call them, Galvanic Thunder Finder is what I was calling it for a little bit until we had to accept that Galvanic Thunder wasn't really working out. Yeah, Elemental Hit of the Spectrum. I think this is an amazing steroid skill when used alongside Sadist. I'm going to go over that more in the gear section, but I felt it necessary to comment on it just briefly and why it's here in the skill section. Life Tap, that makes it so Mana Forged Arrow doesn't need us to use a lot of mana. And then we're going to move on. In our offhand, we're using Divine Ire, and that is with some more gear. Again, I will go over that when we're in the gear section. Detonate mines and automation, I really don't want to constantly be pressing detonate mines, especially on such a defensively bankrupt build. So yeah, automation and detonate mines seems like a natural choice for us. Flame Wall. Before we were using Eldritch Battery, and I didn't want to use Eldritch Battery anymore because I wanted to use Mana Forge with Elemental Hit of the Spectrum. In order to gain some of that fire damage back from losing our Guardian Blessing with Eldritch Battery and Anger, I included Flame Wall with High Impact Mines. Now, you'll notice this is High Impact Mine and not Blast Chain. I'm pretty sure we can still benefit from this as a global modifier, but albeit it's not for a very long time, though the Flame Wall is certainly appreciated for every projectile that goes through and hits a target. Our auras are Purity of Elements, Petrified Blood, Summon Skitterbots, and Grace. We do not have an Enlighten. That will be addressed in the gear section as well. Our only movement ability is Flame Dash. You could probably change that out to have 2 movement abilities, but I didn't really find it all that necessary. And then for the Arrogance auras, we use Clarity and Vitality. We've got to get that mana regeneration from somewhere, and since we are using Petrified Blood, the more life regeneration, the merrier. That does it for the skills. Let's go over. Next, we are going to talk about the passive tree, bandits, config a little bit, I guess, and I'm going to try to simplify a lot of the information in this section specifically because I mean I could really talk all day and easily get lost about what I'm trying to tell you. So first and foremost, you're going to kill all bandits. Early on, you're going to have Brine King and Ralakash, but then as you get your Blood Notch, you will then choose between Arakali or Lunaris. That's really it for the config. You do use frenzy charges. You have detonated a mine recently. Everything else, I mean, Tailwind, yes, but it's not really super important. Has it traveled through the flame wall? Probably. Travel distance, nope, not relevant. Is the enemy ignited, burning, chilled, and shocked? Those are all most likely true. The shock is probably rather small. We're just going to leave it at like 12%. And that's it for the config. For the passive tree, it's really important that you pick up this Thread of Hope, as it will allow you to pick up these additional projectiles and then Primeval Force, which increases elemental damage by 50% with everything else that we've got going. We maintain 4 flasks with permanent uptime by using Druidic Rite, Careful Conservationist, and then our Nature's Adrenaline Forbidden Flesh Jewel combination. If you're not familiar with what that one does, it gives us this. Gain 3 charges every 3 seconds for our flasks. And between Careful Conservationist and Druidic Rite, that means we have permanent uptime of our Topaz, Sapphire, Ruby, and the Wise Oak. You can see them all up here. Here, look. 4, 3, 2, 1, 15. And then let's check on Bismuth Flask real quick. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Boom. All right. Now that we know that they've got permanent uptime from those nodes that we took on our passive tree, I would also like to talk to you about Precise Technique that you may have seen right here. We can't ever deal critical strikes. This is different from Arrow's build, and maybe Emil God's build as well. I'm pretty sure they both use critical strike in their builds, and we do not. The main reason for that is that we are stretched so thin for passive points that there is just no possibility for us to cap out our critical strike chance, or on the flip side, gain a lot of critical strike multiplier without sacrificing even more elsewhere. So we did a lot of thinking, and we did a lot of snooping too. We had to go through PoE Ninja and learn from other people's decisions, and that really, really did kick off the direction that we ultimately decided, which was Precise Technique. Why do we use Precise Technique? In the Aura section, you may have noticed that I don't use precision, and on my gear, I'll just let you know up front, we don't have any accuracy anywhere other than Shaper's Touch. We gain 4 accuracy per 2 intelligence, and then that's enough. That is just flat out enough to cap our accuracy more than likely above 100%. So even if we have a reduction in our stat through a map modifier, we're still going to be completely okay with Precise Technique, not only because of Petrified Blood, but let's just check the accuracy. We have 6,158 accuracy just from that one stat on our gloves. How cool is that? We have about 892 intelligence. So that's why we use Precise Technique. It's a free 40% more attack damage without having to overinvest into something like Critical Strike. Our Timeless Jewel, we use a Glorious Vanity to pick up Immortal Ambition, as this is the only way that we can get rid of our energy shield easily. Why do we want to get rid of our energy shield? We want to get rid of our energy shield because we use Blood Notch. We use Petrified Blood, so we need a Blood Notch. That comes with an immutable force. You should probably pick up one of these with reservation efficiency on it if you can't get a satisfactory amount elsewhere. And yeah, if you don't have your Blood Notch yet and you don't care about losing your energy shield, I would recommend getting rid of this Glorious Vanity and then pick up a, what's it called? A Brutal Restraint. Try to get some increased dexterity nodes on it, as in order to fully benefit from Magebane with no other sources of spell suppression, you need about 1,230 dexterity, and a Brutal Restraint is really going to help you achieve that earlier rather than later like I have now. You're probably going to have to be pretty picky about where you put it. If you want, you can, again, forego that, pick up spell suppression, say down here, you could pick up those 2 points, and then all of a sudden you don't need 1,230 spell suppression, or sorry, dexterity. That'd be a lot of spell suppression. And yeah, you could pick up Ghost Dance instead, but it's not really as consistent as Blood Notch and Immortal Flesh. So keep all of that in mind. There was a little bit of juggling of Timeless Jewels and attributes, and how did I want to spend my passive points. I didn't really want to spend any points on spell suppression if I didn't have to, because of how powerful Magebane is. And just to reiterate, that magic number for Magebane is 1,230 dexterity. With that alone, you will reach 100% chance to suppress spell damage. Now we're at a really interesting part of the build that I picked up from somebody else on PoE Ninja. I don't remember their name, I'm sorry. But this is really cool. They were Inquisitor, and they were like traveling up here, right? They were up here, and they were traveling down this way, and instead of being a Deadeye, they had their Parandus Pact here, and then they had their unnatural instinct right here. So instead of being up here, this is how they had it. So in order to copy them, I had to think about what is the path that will allow me to go by all of this without like bricking the path in other ways. I'll touch on that in just a little bit, but ultimately it was just path down this way, head right on up, and that's where we put our Perandus pack. We don't change that, but we do care about the unnatural instincts location because this gives us even more movement speed. It gives us dexterity because of the Perandus pack, giving attributes to everything in the nearby radius. Here, we can just hover over it. Does it say? Maybe I have to go to the game. Okay, so this is what it gives us when my picture's in the way. Okay, can you guys see now? All right. 38 to all attributes, increased spell damage, we don't benefit from that. Attack speed, global accuracy rating, we definitely benefit from that. Cast speed, maximum life, mana regeneration rate, movement speed, projectile damage, and then a little bit of fledgling attributes at the end. So I think this is really, really cool, and my community tipped me off to this. I would not have known about this alone, and cheers, XTC, Sharko. Sorry about that, I digressed a little bit. But seriously though, if you're part of my community and you frequent the Twitch channel, thank you so much. You guys are all absolutely fantastic, and I love bouncing my ideas off of you. And you know, next build is going to be no different. So hopefully you find yourself in chat and you can find yourself responsible for some of my more cooked ideas. All right, let's keep going. Next jewel socket, that would be Intuitive Leap. I got Corrupted Blood on this. You don't have to do this. You could just spend 2 passive points here, right? And be perfectly fine getting a cheaper alternative that doesn't cost 18 Divine Orbs. But if you want to maximize your amount of passive points available, then that is probably one of the easier ways to do it, albeit expensive. Let's talk about the cluster jewels a little bit. The cluster jewels are quite similar to my previous build, as I said, but we are using, instead of lightning cluster jewels, we are using elemental. Ideally, you would get attributes on these as well as the final suffix, but you want sadist, and then really anything else that forces sadist to the bottom. So that's going to be an additional prefix, whether it's widespread destruction or, I'm not going to go through it. You know what I mean. You need one suffix if it's prismatic heart or one of the Doriani's things, and then sadist with any other prefix, and that will force sadist and that other prefix to the bottom. Sadist is very valuable to us simply because it's a lot of increased elemental damage if we check all of those boxes, and because we use Mana Forged, where is it? Mana Forged Elemental Hit of the Spectrum, we do. Normally, the mines would not be able to apply those elements and qualify for our application, but because Mana Forged Arrows is using the arrow from us, not a mine, we do benefit from Sadist quite handsomely. And we don't even really have to think about it because it comes with its own elemental damage even if we weren't stacking attributes. So if you aren't an attribute stacking build and you don't have another source of elemental damage through self-application, just use Elemental Hit of the Spectrum. It's got it all built in alongside the Freeze, Shock, and Ignite chance. So a really, really nice tech that we discovered recently. And that is basically every single cluster jewel. They're all copies of each other. Sadist, Widespread Destruction, Prismatic Heart. Sadist, Widespread Destruction, and Prismatic Heart. You really don't need the resistances from Prismatic Heart, so don't lose sleep if you can't pick it up. If you really want the life recoup, you can, but you probably would be happier with more damage. You do need the reservation efficiency from this cluster. I'm not sure how much you actually need influence because we're not using high impact mines as our main source of mines. But you absolutely do need this cluster right here. Without this, we're not going to have enough reservation efficiency. And even to boot, on the note of reservation efficiency, what my current anoint is utmost might. And the reason why we do that is because we pick up every other attribute increased cluster notable, which is utmost swiftness, and then we also pick up utmost intellect. But if you don't have enough reservation efficiency, this is one of the easiest things that you can change, as instead of picking up utmost might, you can instead pick up sovereignty. And I would genuinely recommend doing that if you find yourself in such a place of needing more reservation efficiency on this build, because um, I'm really not confident in how much this is providing for us, but it is thematic, and it does complete the triangle in my eyes. I think that does it for the passive tree. For the masteries, you want increased attributes, increased maximum life with no life modifiers on your body armor, and last but not least, I mean, hits have 25% chance to treat enemy monster elemental resistance values as inverted is our main point of leverage for dealing damage. It's why we don't use other curses. It's why we don't do almost anything else, is because this is super powerful for what we have planned on using it for. We spam projectiles, and eventually those resistances are going to be inverted and do big damage. So, yeah, I would absolutely pick this mastery up whenever you can. Just double checking. Oh yeah, you need 1% increased damage per 5 of your lowest attribute, and that kind of comes into play with utmost might. Strength will be your lowest attribute, and the more you have it, the better that mastery over here is going to work out. Sorry, I was swiping off my desk. Had like crumbs there or something. I eat at my desk, don't judge me. Projectile mastery. Per 16 dexterity, you'll get 1% increased damage. You won't reach 1000 dexterity on this build, I'm pretty sure, but yeah, that's a very important mastery because we have quite a lot of dexterity. And then I think the last thing that I haven't commented on is point blank. The reason why we pick up point blank is mainly that while far shot is really nice and that our projectiles do go quite far, sometimes there's going to be a monster that is very fast, or just able to keep up with you as you currently are, and that does not feel good. It does not feel good to just all of a sudden lose a majority of your damage because they're not far enough away to benefit in that way. So if you're unfamiliar with far shot and point blank interaction, it's like you have not the best of both worlds, but you have a very happy middle of the road interaction where you're not at the maximum benefit of either, but you are always getting a benefit from one or the other. And that's the passive tree, I think. If I forgot to mention anything, or if you're still curious about some of the things that I've done in this passive tree, be sure to let me know. But I'm near confident that that's just about everything I could say about the passive tree. Which means we will then be going on to the gear section. Alrighty then. Let's go over the gear. Widow Hail. Get the best one you possibly can. The Poised Prism. Get the best one you possibly can. Seriously, those resistances may seem like they don't matter, but early on they will, until you're able to do like the Forbidden Flame combination that I'm doing to have permanent flask uptime. Or if you do Brutal Restraint with the Trader, it's like a lot easier to maintain uptime on your flasks, but that's another conversation. And I'd recommend, if you're curious on how to do that, come over to the stream sometime later on this afternoon, and I'll be happy to tell you about how to sustain your flasks on regardless of whichever build you're playing. Curtain Call. We need this. I talked about it earlier, but I didn't tell you that I somehow snagged a very, very special Curtain Call. A very, very special Curtain Call. Look at that implicit. 80% cost and reservation multiplier. That is better than a level 4 Enlighten, and we don't even have to use it as a gem. So we put all of our auras into our helmet because of this bad boy, and you're going to hate me for this, but we bought this for 1 Divine Orb. That's not normal. I don't know why they were selling it for 1 Divine Orb, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, the next one is 80 Divine Orbs. I ought to buy this. And yeah, it has served us well. This is not going to be replicatable. The process of crafting this would involve getting glimpses of chaos and then using veiled orbs, hopefully getting this correct implicit, and then you also need to not brick it and have it choose the option that turns it into a specific or like a random unique helmet. And that helmet has to choose the right helmet. Glimpse of Chaoses are not cheap, and they are very eager to brick. The Glimpses of Chaos are not happy to exist as a helmet. Every one I've ever had is bricked. So yeah, if you absolutely have to, buy this. Do not try to make it, as it's near impossible. Sakawal's Nest. You want as many attributes as you can possibly get, but also, as importantly, you need that mana reservation efficiency to be as high as you can possibly get. That is a pain point for the build, and we need that stat. Mana reservation efficiency. Shaper's Touch. You don't have to have them corrupted, but +1 frenzy charges is more mind throwing speed and more damage. What's not to like? Other than that, you buy this and it's done. You don't care about the armor and you don't care about the energy shield stat. So everything else is completely static, and you just buy a pair of Shaper's Touch and go. Garukan's Flight. I do think that these are necessary because they make us immune to burning ground, shocked ground, chilled ground. We don't want to be slower. We don't want to die to damage over time. And they come with dexterity and 2 maximum life per 10 dexterity. That's like 500 life flat for us when we take these things off. I mean, I can show you right now. So right now we're at 1,875 life with Petrified Blood up. And then we lose 250. So flat life, that's 550 life. We really want to use Garukans, and we also really want to use Shaper's Touch for the same thing as well. Like when we take these off, look, we lose just about the same amount of life. Right around 500. So between those two items, we make up for a lot of our life deficiency. But the amulet is kind of up in the air. Because one, this isn't perfectly replicatable. It's not like it's an Astromentis, which is the amulet I would recommend until you get to this point. If you haven't seen an Astromentis, it's this Onyx amulet that gives you a whole heck of a lot of attributes. And this is what we were using before we got this Eyes of the Great Wolf, with increased attributes and increased maximum life. Without that amulet, the maximum life, we again lose a whole heck of a lot of life. And we need that so that we don't just get outright one-shot all the time when random things are being projected at us or being off-screen or something like that. So yeah, try to pick up one of these if you can. You're not going to have as much attributes, say, for intelligence and strength, because the threshold for this increased attribute stat on this Eyes of Great Wolf to become better than what an Astromentis would be, and I'll also give you a visual example. Sorry. So we take this off, right? 892, 683, 1,276, and we go down by quite a lot. But when we put on the Astromentis, we gain intelligence and strength, but we lose dexterity. This is not acceptable because dexterity is the most important one. Because 1,230 dexterity, like I said before, is the threshold for Magebane to cap out our spell suppression alone, without any other sources of spell suppression. So I absolutely do value 1,230 dexterity more than a little bit on the top of strength and intelligence. For the ring, you don't have to do this, but it is a lot of attributes, and I'm not sure if it's really completely worth it at the end of the day. Sure, it's a lot of attributes, but I don't know if you would be better off like using a different skill and then like a Nemus and then just a regular ring. Because this was like 90 Divine Orbs, and then we spent like, I want to say 10 Divine Orbs on like Essence crafting it. On top of the Fracture. We got very lucky with the Fracture. It hit the very first one. The very first Fracturing Orb that we used. So we got this ring done relatively cheap. Compared to how much it could have potentially cost us if we wanted it to be absolutely perfect. But it's a nice ring nonetheless, and if you wanted the most attributes you could possibly stomach, it would be a helical ring with triple tier 1 attribute suffixes. Kalandra's Touch, so that you don't have to craft a second helical ring. Or if you want to experiment, I would recommend a Nemus. I don't have one to showcase some of these things at the end after I'm done with this gear section, but I would say it could probably be pretty fun if you have one laying around. Cyclopean Coil. Ideally, you would corrupt this to have 18% increased attributes, and then that implicit would change over to a double intelligence and dexterity. Or, you know, like intelligence, dexterity, and then strength, intelligence, or whatever the combination can be. And you would want those implicits instead of just flat life. Because 40 life isn't that much to write home about, but the attributes would. Moving on to the flasks. These flasks are kind of similar to the ones I talked about in my previous build guide, but I'll go over them anyways. That would be 15% of damage taken from hits is leached as life as a suffix. Regenerate 3% of life during effect. And then for the movement speed, I can't remember, did I ever actually change that? No? Okay. Well, I can't remember what I was going to use there, but I think it was block and stun recovery instead of the movement speed, but movement speed is fine. And you'll also notice they each have increased duration. And they all have the same number of increased duration. That would be 36% increased duration with all of the other flask shenanigans that I have going on in the build. That leaves them at 20% quality, 12.5 seconds long of a duration. You need it to be that long because that 0.5 seconds is all that remains after everything else that needs to happen. So you have 0.5 seconds of leeway for the loop to continue. So you can't run map mods that reduce your flash charges gains and stuff like that, as it's going to break the loop and then all of a sudden you're not going to have 80% maximum resistances across all elements. So make sure if you try to do this with only Druidic Rite and only Careful Conservationist with Nature's Adrenaline, you're going to need 36% increased duration, or you're going to need some form of reduced flash charges used. Back to the rest of the gear. That's the flasks. We use Wise Oak because we deal elemental damage, and it also fits in the parameters of high duration flask, low amount of charges on use. And really, if you want like a rule of thumb for magic flasks, that number is like 12 seconds with consume 20 out of 50. And then for unique flasks, it's much more complicated, so I'm not going to give you a rule of thumb on that one. But as you can see, the Wise Oak has a high duration and then consumes a rather low amount of charges on use. And we use the Writhing Jar to enable Rampage for ourselves with Sinvicta's Metal. This is what I was talking about earlier. We weapon swap and then we use Divine Ire after using Writhing Jar, and that enables Rampage. Rampage is a really fun mechanic. I try to include it in every single build that I can, because I really do just find it that much fun. That does it for the gear. We've already gone over all of the jewels except for two, and that would be Split Personality. We use two of these. You don't have to pick up the Strength Intelligence one, which is what I've seen other builds doing, but yeah, these were relatively cheap. I think they were like 50 chaos a pop, but they gave us a whole heck of a lot of attributes. I think it's like 50 of each. Let me check. Yep, 50 dexterity, 50 intelligence, and then it's the same for the other one because they have the same travel distance, which is 36 nodes. 36 nodes, and that's about 50 attributes in both directions. Get through the rest of the video. As I promised, we're going to go ahead and showcase a couple of different skills with this setup. It's not that I am recommending any one of these skills, but I do have some commentary for each of them. And yeah, let's go ahead and hop on into it. Oh, excuse me. Rate the burp in chat. Or the comments. So yeah, this was the original meme idea that we had. And I heard you like projectiles, so we put some projectiles inside your projectiles so you can projectile while you projectile, dog. Thanks, Exhibit. And now that you guys know what the meme was, let's go ahead and show the tornado shot, right? You saw that in the original clip. Barrage of Volley Fire. I think Barrage of Volley Fire is most capable of interacting with Nemus. Not only because it fires a whole heck of a lot of arrows, but none of those arrows are secondary projectiles, which means that all of them would come right back to us if we were using Nemus, regardless of if they are going in different directions. So with just a little bit of additional projectile speed, I'm sure that this could have a whole lot of additional damage effectiveness, but I could not afford a Nemus, and I'm looking forward to another build idea I have now. So let me know if you get a chance to experiment with this, as I think there's potential there. Next, we're going to do Barrage, just normal Barrage. Now, I have a question for you guys on this one. When you use Barrage and you have the elemental resistances are inverted with a 25% chance to occur, when you have that mastery and you're using Barrage, does each arrow individually check if it's going to invert the target's mastery, or sorry, the target's elemental resistance, or if one of the arrows inverts the target's elemental resistance, all of them are going to invert it? I'm really not sure, and to boot, I'm also not sure as to how I could possibly even begin to test such a thing. So if you have any information regarding that, let me know in the comments as well. I am very eager to understand how Barrage works when paired with that mastery. So that's Barrage. We'll show you Explosive Arrow. Explosive Arrow is what Emil God used in his original video with Curtain Call. We can't really use it because it doesn't have an easy way to leverage hitting frequently. But as you can see, it's still perfectly fine, and you could probably play this skill still if you wanted. Blast Rain. With the rain skills, you don't need any penetration. Explosive Arrow would be the same. You don't want any penetration for that skill. But any rain skill, whether it's Blast Rain or Storm Rain, Rain of Arrows, you name it, you're going to get a whole heck of a lot of arrows. So that's that. Let me just go ahead and show you Elemental Hit of the Spectrum, in case you weren't using it in your Manaforged link. Another exceptional clear skill. But it does not have a way to leverage the hitting multiple times either, so not as good of an option other than being a damage steroid for us. Ice Shot. This is what Arrow used in his Deadeye Minor. And probably still perfectly okay to use. I think he used Ice Shot of Penetration though, because it has a higher damage effectiveness. So that's that. What else can we do? Lightning Arrow. This is basically going to behave the same way as Elemental Hit of the Spectrum would. Or Ice Shot. But still, completely serviceable for the intended purposes. Next up, oh, let's get Ice Shot out of there, we already saw that, is Scourger of the Menace. Scourger of the Menace is also one that does not require any pierce because it has it built in. And it's got just as good of a damage effectiveness as Tornado Shot. So let's grab ourselves a small map here and then we'll just run it real quick, just to show you. And I would say this is right up there with Tornado Shot being one of the more arguably good skills for this setup, as not having to care about pierce is really nice. And you just fire out a whole heck of a lot of arrows. And it comes with a built-in secondary hit mechanic with the Spore Pods and Thorn Arrows. And I would say that's all I really have to show you. Thanks for tuning in. You guys are absolutely fantastic if you stuck out through the whole thing. You didn't have to do that, but you did, and I would like to say thank you. So, thanks. um, I do have another build planned. I want to start working on some league starters for 3.25. I am getting geared up for Phase 4 of World of Warcraft. I'm still enjoying old school RuneScape. I tried out Moonring recently. That was kind of a weird one. I feel like there's some other things that are escaping me. I tried out Deep Rock Galactic with some of my chat recently in community. That was a whole lot of fun. I might have to buy that one eventually because it's on sale right now. And there are a plethora of other games that I'm excited about from recent gaming shows. So I don't only play Path of Exile here. Feel free to stop by the channel sometime. I would love to talk to you about anything that's on your mind, whether it be up and coming games, your new Path of Exile build, or if you need help with something in any of those games, right? So don't be a stranger. Would love to see you on the channel. I stream every single afternoon, every single day into the wee hours of the morning. And today is going to be no different. Planning on going live in just about an hour and a half or so. And I think that does it. Be good to others, but most of all, be good to yourself. And I will see you guys next time. Stay safe.